Hello and welcome back to theclinicaltrialsguru.com. My name is Dan Sfera, and I'm very glad to have my guest today, Prasad Sristi. He's the founder and CEO of Mindprint, which is a technology company that focuses on helping CROs improve the everything that goes into the actual business side of the operations. And Prasad will tell us more about what Mindprint does later on. But for now, I just wanted to talk to Prasad about who he is, how he got started in this industry, and how he came about founding Mindprint. So thank you for coming on the show today, Prasad.
Thank you for having me, Dan.
So let's start with you. What's your background and how did you get involved in the research industry?
Yes, I've always worked in technology companies, some of them really big, working with clients, and my focus in my past career has really been on understanding complex requirements and translating them into simple solutions. And so when I formed Mindprint about 4.5 years ago, we were doing this enterprise software for service companies, which is a really complex thing to do. And then I happened to meet with the owner of a small size CRO, who told me that there was no software available in the market to run her CRO's operations, which to me was quite strange.
And how
There's a
small
lot of
how small was the CRO?
less than 50 people.
Okay.
So it was something that I couldn't quite take it at face value. And when we did our research, it was indeed true. There's a lot of software out there to run the clinical trial itself, like clinical trial management systems, CTMS, electronic design, data capture, EDCs, but there was hardly any software to run the business side of the CRO. So that's how we got into the market. And since then, we've worked with a number of CROs to implement software to help them run their business
Hmm.
and improve their focus on profitability. As you know, CROs there are about 1,000 CROs in North America by some estimates,
Right.
and they employ a lot of people. So profitability of CROs is of crucial importance to the pharma supply chain in total.
Yeah, let's talk about CROs in general. It seems like everyone these days can label themselves a CRO. I know I have a few sites across the country, and at some point I could call myself a CRO if I start implementing monitoring and managing the sites and packaging the data to the sponsor. So what, by your definition, is a CRO?
A CRO especially is essentially, in our opinion, a CRO is a company that adds real value to the drug discovery process. And CROs can typically be two types: preclinical and clinical. The clinical CROs focus on everything to do with the human trials, and the preclinical focus on before that. And so I think the CRO industry has evolved a lot from the time when they were purely supplying staff to do clinical trials, to all the way to developing niche expertise in certain areas and bringing some value to the table with respect to the study design, the implementation process, and all the way to phase 4 and FDA approval. So these CROs are really becoming knowledge centers, gaining valuable expertise over the years by simply by the number of clinical trials that they're conducting, and also the number of the exposure that they have to the number of sponsors that they're working with. And so I believe they're a very valuable uh, key component of the drug development supply chain.
Hmm. And your company, Mindprint, has been helping CROs perfect their business model, the way they run their business. What has been the biggest, or let's say the top three biggest challenges for CROs when it comes to running and managing their actual business operations?
Yeah, the biggest challenge really comes with the fact that the contracts that the CROs have with sponsors, they're quite complex. They can be a combination of T&M, which is billing based on the hours consumed, and unitized budgets, which is basically saying that the sponsor is going to pay for the delivery of units as opposed to how much time is spent on delivering the unit, and milestone-based payments, which is database lock, etc. You could have a payment. So these contracts become very complex, and without a software, without a proper enterprise software, CROs end up managing this stuff in Excel spreadsheets and discrete systems, and essentially in a lot of informal databases. And that's one big challenge. It's bringing that together in an enterprise software, capturing that, having a system that helps the CROs do streamlined study proposals to the sponsors repeatedly, efficiently, in a predictable manner. That is one of the key challenges. Then the second challenge is, in general, implementation of any of these systems is that no two CROs that we work with are alike in terms of their operations, how they run their operations. Even, for example, two similarly sized CROs working in oncology, which is a niche segment in general. Even two CROs working in the same therapeutic vertical would still do things differently as far as the business operations are concerned. So it is the ability of the software to meet the operational requirements of the CRO. That's a challenge. So you need a technology that you can really customize to each of the CROs.
Mm-hmm.
Then the third would be data migration, and whenever any of our clients adopt our system or any system, the transition systems, you want to make sure that the data that's in the old system or the old lack of system, lying around in spreadsheets, is all migrated to the new system so that they can seamlessly transition. So that would be the number 3 challenge. So these would be the top 3 challenges: the study proposals, the complexity of it, then the customization that comes with how operations are conducted, and the data migration. Top 3
Mm-hmm.
challenges implementation, I would say.
And what is the typical size of the CRO you Mindprint contracts with?
There is really, we have seen that there is a lot of growth in CROs which specialize in something, as opposed to
Mm-hmm.
being just based on size, etc.
So
So
basically,
CROs,
if you specialize in oncology, or you may specialize in CNS
correct,
trials. Okay.
correct, specialize either in a therapeutic vertical, or in some cases devices, for example, medical devices.
Mm-hmm.
So we see a lot of growth in this area, and so that reflects our client pool, if you will. So there's no typical size. We have worked with small organizations with less than 50 people, to all the way up to multinational organizations with operations in more than a dozen countries.
Mm-hmm.
And that again brings the customization required back to the discussion. It's
Mm-hmm.
these CROs are so varied. Even it doesn't matter that two CROs of the same size have different operations. You can imagine the operational difference between a CRO with 50 employees versus a CRO with 500 or 5,000 employees.
Right, and that brings up a good question and an interesting question that I try to think about these type of things when I'm making these videos. Do you see the future of this industry? I guess, do you see, like we've discussed, more specialized CROs emerging, or do you see larger ones like Quintiles and PPD just taking more of the market share and driving these small CROs out of business? Where do you think the industry's headed?
As you would agree, Dan, I don't have a crystal ball either, but I think there's a strong case to be made for specialization.
Mm-hmm.
If a CRO brings value to the table, so you're transitioning from providing resources to providing valuable knowledge in the drug discovery process.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that some of the phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 trials, the smaller trials, are all a lot of them are being conducted in the smaller CROs, and when these CROs prove themselves to be capable of conducting these trials,
Mm-hmm.
then you'll see them getting phase 3 and phase 4 work, and they will grow in size. So I think at this point, the top 5 CROs are taking a lot of business, But we also see tremendous growth with the smaller CROs. The large CROs are taking a lot of business, but the small CROs are growing faster than the larger CROs.
Yeah, it's interesting
So
you
who
say
knows
that.
where it will end up, but it's an interesting dynamic. Yes.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I've talked with a auditor from a large CRO the other day at one of my clinics, and she was talking about how the last sponsor that she worked with, because in her role she's kind of a liaison between the CRO and the sponsor. The last sponsor was planning a new study and asked her, "Hey, we're willing to give you this study to manage, but do you have any people, any CRAs who can specialize in cardiology trials?"
Right.
And they ended up giving the work to them anyways because they did have CRAs. They're a large CRO, so they had CRAs with experience. But she said it's one of the first times she's actually heard that before, even as few as 5 years ago. Sponsors would not necessarily request for specialists in the
Right.
CRAs, and now they are. And she sees that, she would agree with us. She sees this as an opportunity for the smaller CROs to specialize themselves and really provide their own foothold in their little niche part of the industry. Now, does Mindprint help with constructing budgets when it comes to CROs and their RFPs to sponsors when they're submitting for requests for proposal?
That's correct. So our software, see, one of the challenges in if you go back to the original reason why a CRO should adopt an enterprise software is to be able to measure profitability. So where does profitability? What is it? How do you measure it? It's really the difference between what you've earned versus what you've consumed in terms of resources or revenue per se, revenue minus cost, if you will. And the revenue portion of it is decided by the study proposal. So that really is the key entry point into the profitability calculation. So without having the software do the study proposals, it becomes very difficult if you do the proposals in an Excel spreadsheet and then capture time and unit somewhere else in a web-based system. It becomes very difficult to do the profitability analysis because you really have to you really don't know how much was promised and in terms of revenue, incoming revenue by the sponsor. So that's where we differentiate by having our software generate the proposals, and that streamlined approach has the side effects of positive side effects of basically being able to churn out a number of proposals more efficiently, cutting down on the proposal generation time. Even though we made the module because the original intention was to measure profitability, it had all these other advantages to the CRO that they're generating far more proposals per week and they're able to cut down the proposal generating time. What we see is that a number of people are involved in generation of the process, not just a proposal team. So it's very important to have collaboration capabilities in the software. You want the head of data management and the head of clinical to work on their pieces and then contribute to the overall study proposal. Complex study would require interaction by these people. So to have a stable and scalable software platform that enables them to do that, where people are working on different pieces and the proposal manager can bring them all together and send to the sponsor on time to respond to the RFP is very important. And we've interestingly, sorry to interrupt. Interestingly, we found that the sponsors are interested in the other side of the equation. We see a lot of sponsors trying to get proposals from a number of CROs and select the right vendor, make apples to apples comparisons. So in the last 6 months, we've been working with some of the top pharma companies to help them generate a budget proposal in house and then enable them to gather CRO proposals and have our software run reports where they can do an apples to apples comparison of the proposals received from various CROs. And so they can see, okay, this particular CRO is quoting more in data management, and let's double click on it and look into where exactly they're quoting higher and what their assumptions are, versus CRO B could be quoting higher in clinical and check their assumptions etc. So yeah, this study
Hmm.
proposal automation is a complex problem to solve, and we think we have solved it better than anyone else in the industry, and hence getting this traction.
Hmm. So pharma's goal in doing that, big pharma's goal in doing that, is to standardize costs, I guess, across the board, or see what the typical range would be for a study of
Yeah,
a particular kind.
exactly. I mean, these if it takes a long time for the CROs to generate the proposal. But imagine having a sponsor having to digest
Hmm.
information from 10 of those proposals that they received probably from 10 CROs that they've sent the RFP to.
Hmm.
So having essentially the ability to discern that information, dissect it and understand it and internalize it requires a lot of effort. And any help that they can get in that aspect of selecting the right CRO is very appreciated by them. So
Hmm. And there's a debate on this show amongst the research sites, and we have a lot of CROs and people from pharma watching as well. But amongst the research clinics out there, there's been a debate as to what exactly the margins are, the profit margins are, when a CRO negotiates a budget with a clinic. And do you have any bits of advice for the research sites out there? My advice, my recent discovery, because I got a hold of a budget recently from a CRO that a CRO was negotiating with a sponsor, was that they don't have that great of margins, actually, when it comes to negotiating with the research sites. In the past, and maybe it was different, I assumed that they would have 50% margins, or that the sponsor would pay double what the CRO is paying the site for the budget. I'm seeing that to be not true now, and I don't know if it's just the particular budgets I've seen, or if that's something relatively new as the sponsors have kind of gotten smarter and said, hey, we're not going to pay you guys this much when the sites are only getting X amount of dollars.
I
What do
think
you think but what are the profit margins that you've seen from the CROs and the
yeah
sites?
from yeah, absolutely. From what I've seen, the CROs have been very transparent with respect to the investigator payments, and I think some of the recent regulation has also made it important, has brought transparency to the table. And in my experience, actually, in our organization's experience, CROs treat these investigator payments as pass through. So they're not looking to these investigator payments as a profit center, if you will. So I would say that any concern with respect to CROs making money on these investigator payments is probably ill-placed. What I think can be done is that I think the investigative payments in general, the transparency and efficiency of dispersing these payments can in general be improved. So there's not a lot of waiting on the investigator's part to receive payments, and there's not a lot of admin overhead that goes into on both sides, from the CRO side as well as the investigator side. There should not be a lot of admin overhead in sending and receiving these payments and providing the right information to get the right payments. So I think there's a lot of scope for technology to improve that process there, increasing transparency, or also decreasing the admin overhead so that some of the costs associated with sending and receiving these payments go down, and hence the sites feel that they don't have to have a team of full-time people just to receive payments from
Hmm.
CROs, and the CROs don't need to have two or three full-time people to just manage these payments.
Right. And so if the CROs, from the budget side, from the budget they negotiate with the clinics, if their profit margins are not that big there, where do they make their money from? Is it the partnerships they develop with the drug
Well,
companies when the drug's developed, or is it
really, the study budget from a CRO to a sponsor has two components. One is to do with the resources that the CRO spends to conduct that clinical trial. So here we're talking about people involved in data management, the
mm-hmm,
CRAs, clinical research associates,
I see.
project managers. medical writers, pharmacology experts, all of these people that are employed in the CRO and the time that they spend. And then the second component is so that is in one bucket, and the second bucket is to do with investigator payments. Like I said,
I see.
the investigator payments are completely looked at in most cases, at least the cases that we work with, are seen as pass-through payments, and the resources that they're spending to conduct the clinical trial, and those become billable hours, and that's where that's how they see as a primary source of revenue and profits for their business.
Yeah, I'm glad you were able to clear that up. So as far as like hiring medical monitors and having general safety overview of the study being conducted,
Exactly.
how to handle with adverse events, how to change and adapt protocols in the middle of the study, they're
Right.
really paying for the expertise, not necessarily
Correct.
the payments that they're giving to the investigators. They're almost
Correct.
willing to give that up just evenly with no profit and then just
Right.
bill for the rest of the
That's right.
expertise.
That's right.
Fascinating, fascinating. Prasad, thank you very much for coming on. If someone would want to get a hold of you, maybe from a CRO or a sponsor, or even a large research clinic network, how would they best reach you?
Well, it's best to our contact information is on our website www.mindprintsolutions.com,
Okay.
and they can find our phone number there as well. It's pretty easy to navigate. My
Mm,
personal email is prasad, Prasad, at mindprintsolutions.com. Mindprint Solutions being a single word, and I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn as well. So,
that's right.
and yeah, so
I will have links to all of that when I put this blog post up in a few days. Thank you, Prasad. I appreciate you coming on. We can do this again later if you want. Maybe have a part two, discuss
look
more
forward to
in-depth
that, Dan.
things. Yeah, I look forward to it too. I want to give shout out to my clinical trial guru producers. That's South Coast Clinical Trials, Sarah Elizabeth Siegler, Resolve Research Solutions, Accurate Clinical Trials, PTNR, Erdhart Clinical Research, Tradestone LLC, Breakthrough Clinical Trials, Kulkarni Law Firm, Biopharm Systems, Zymewire, Mozio, St. Paul Medical Research Center, Investigator Research Group, Phlebotomy Services, Atria Clinical Research Management, Rheumatic Disease Clinical Research Center, and Clinexus Research LLC. And that's becoming a long list of producers. There's still more spots. So let me know, you guys, if you want to get involved. And thank you again, Prasad. We will do this again, okay?
Thank you very much, Dan. Thank you for having me.
And thank you all for watching. Dan at theclinicaltrialsguru.com. Take care.